Radio Rahim reporting from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, dropping some science for my brother right now. What you feel like talking about, politics or politics?
Yeah, right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon everyone. It's politics. I would think America is in trouble. America is in a state of irreconcilable differences. Many. Things that, the last time America was in this state was probably in the 1840s, 1850s, right preceding the Civil War. And the main issue then was slavery, okay? The people in the so-called red states, they refused to do without their slavery, and they were willing to fight and die to protect their right to keep slaves, to keep our people enslaved. And many people in the North didn't have a problem with it, to tell the truth. The truth being told, the money folks in the places like Boston, because the cotton grown in the South was shipped to the first factories in Boston to create fabric. And so, that was the connection. A lot of people don't think about. There's a great book called How the North Promoted Slavery, But today, the politics, man, is, these terms, I have a concern about being progressive, or being conservative. What does that mean? So in other words, if you don't agree that men can be women and women can be men, then you're not a progressive. Like, how is that progressive thinking? You're conservative if you don't believe in this gender foolishness, confusion, okay? Since when you can't, if somebody asks you what is a woman, you can't say a woman is an adult female human being. You can't say that, so this country is in trouble because the so-called progressive people say that people who refuse to accept that they're not progressive, they're conservative, okay? So, and there are people, because of their faith, who will never agree with that. Since when can't you say, archaeologists can dig up a body from 1,000 years ago and look at the bones and say, that's a woman, or that's a man. They've had this ability forever. So now, there are people who, so-called educated people, who will tell you there's no difference between a male and a female. Genitalia don't mean nothing. It's nonsense. It's nonsensical. Okay, it's straight up nonsensical that the so-called educated person will think that there's no difference between them, regardless of the genitals, that there's no difference between a man and a woman. There's so many differences, just skeletal, alone. We're different. We've been different for the longest human beings have been alive, we've been different. So now, in modern times, the times we live in, they're trying to say there's no difference. Like, it's crazy. It's like up is down and down is up. So there's no reconciliation. People who still have any kind of sense will never accept that. In other words, you just got to enter into crazy land in order to be progressive. You got to enter into crazy land. You got to reject everything human beings have come to know up until now. You got to reject it. And that's why I say Americans in trouble. Americans in trouble. This whole idea started in the educational institutions. There's a great video out there called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. You can see it on YouTube. Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. And there's this comedian, Ben Stein, he goes through the university system. I think in the early 2000s it came out. And he finds out that there's this movement in all the universities, the secular universities. They're expelling professors and tenured professors who who say anything about intelligent design in regards to creation. If they write a paper about it, if they give a lecture about it, they're kicking these teachers out of college, out of the colleges. So the only thing acceptable is is evolution. When you talk about creation, the only thing acceptable is evolution. The theory of evolution. Now, mind you, it was only a theory. So this idea that there's no God, because that's all intelligent design. They didn't even say belief in God. They just say we believe. When we look at creation, we look at with the science, it seems clear that there's some intelligence behind the design. And so the secularists are saying, no, you can't talk about that. You know, Charles Darwin's theory of how life developed and formed and how it all started, that's the only thing acceptable. So this is when all this stuff started. Once they got the young people coming out of colleges now, most of them, they lead them towards atheism, disbelief in God. Okay, so once you get that in, now you can push this gender stuff on the young people, because it's the young people who are being affected by it more than anybody else. And this is another reason why the Europeans in America, they're upset, because the one demographic that's being affected the most by this are little white girls. White girls they're maniac. They're like, you know, mommy, I want to be a boy. You know, they're the ones, and so they're not having babies. They're not reproducing. You know, they're leaving belief in God. So that's another reason why you have the southern whites. They're up in arms. Okay, they're up in arms about this. They see they call it existential. It's for them. If they don't straighten this out, they will no longer exist, because their numbers are dwindling. White folk, between abortions, deciding not to have babies, and between this gender dysphoria and all this stuff, their daughters are not having babies. So their numbers are dwindling. And with immigration, brown people are being let in the country, and then with black folks reproducing, and so they say by 2050, you know, they will cease to be in the majority in this country. So this is why it's irreconcilable. They're not going to settle, because for them it's a matter of existence, being able to continue to exist. So there's no reconciliation. There's no meeting of the minds. There is no meeting of the mind. There is no meeting of the hearts. You know, so America is in real serious trouble politically. And then, you know, Trump, you know, he's really not a politician. He's playing politician, but he's not. He doesn't have a clue what he's doing. And the danger is he's surrounded himself with a lot of people who don't have. He's putting people in charge of different offices and departments that don't have a clue what they're doing. So America, which is one of the most dangerous countries in the world in terms of military, even the guy they got in charge of the Pentagon, you know, he don't know what he don't have a clue. I understand he was the commentator on Fox.
Yeah, Pete Heck.
Yeah, and the woman I mentioned, McMahon, who's in charge of education, she don't know nothing about education. You know, so he's putting people, loyalists, in positions, running America, the most powerful country in the world. That's the real danger of a guy like Trump. You know, you got incompetent people. And the most competent people in America right now are the African American sisters, man. They're like, you know, what, Jasmine Crockett? She's brilliant, you know, and she's a sister. I think she's from Dallas or Houston. Which one? She's from
Houston.
She's from Houston, but she's sharp. You know, she cut them up when they try to come at her verbally. You know, our sisters, you know, she's very smart and she can express herself. I'm gonna tell you who else is sharp. Joy Reid, very sharp sister, man. She was on MSNBC, I believe. But the sisters, man, are standing up. And one of the things I heard Joy Reid say, she said, We need, you know, a lot of people are old-fashioned. We need black men. You know, yeah, we there, we sharp, we can hold our own, but we need black men to come and take the lead. You know, and because a lot of folks ain't ready for black women to take the lead. You know, and she said it. We need the black men come up. You know, these guys like Cory Booker. You know, these guys are clowns. You know, all they're concerned about is being in positions of power, but they're not doing anything to come to stand up. You know, to stand up in positions of leadership. You know, all they're concerned about is their little paycheck. You know, making money. You know, so yeah, I mean, America is in serious trouble. You know, the industry has left America. You know, it's in China. And, you know, so it's not going to be easy changing the direction of America at this point. The politics have failed us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Radio Rahim reporting from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, dropping real science on you.